Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a just variety of terrifying experiences that I'd like to share with you. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? Okay, so we'll start today off with an update. About a month and a half ago, I had been looking at a very strange, unknown animal or unknown attack. Just a kind of a who did it, what did it, real strange. So I do get emails from subscribers when there's a bear attack or whatnot and missing hikers. And I'll watch them and check out the news. And I'd say 5% of the attacks that are brought to the public eye are cryptid or paranormal related, whatever you want to call it. Tony Aarons, Amber Miller, Corey Godsey, the list goes on. Now, when Brenda Hamilton was first attacked long ago is when I really started to look at these. And right from day one, I have 2 folders that are about that thick of accumulated information on all of these attacks and people that I've talked to, interviewed, this and that. So, and the reason why I say 5% is because they are the ones that slip through the cracks. 95% of the attacks and missing hikers that are brought to public eye have been sifted through and made sure that they are nothing questionable. But like Tony Aarons, Amber Miller, Corey Godsey, and so on, they do slip through the cracks. It's just another way of the government keeping a lid on it all. And then when they do slip through, they usually turn the victim into a villain. They just really character assassinate the victim, which is shameful. So there was a case in Colorado back in August outside of Cripple Creek in Teller County. And I'll share with you the first couple of news articles and then what a subscriber sent me today. Woman/dog attacked in violent assault inside Teller County camper. The attack was reported outside of Cripple Creek. Posted August 7th, 3:26 p.m. Now, initially, when this was brought to the public's eye, the police and media said this woman was dead. So, editor's note, the Teller County Sheriff's Office initially told Denver 7 the woman involved in this case had died due to her injuries. The Sheriff's Office corrected itself at 4:30 p.m. Wednesday to say the woman is in extremely critical condition and has not passed away. This story has been updated with their corrections. Teller County, Colorado. A woman was seriously injured after she was assaulted in a camper in an unincorporated area of Teller County. Few details are available, but according to Teller County Sheriff's Office, a person called 911 at around 12:43 a.m. Wednesday to report a woman and her dog had been violently assaulted in a camper outside of Cripple Creek. The woman was taken to the hospital. She is still in extremely critical condition. The Sheriff's Office said as of 3 p.m. the dog was in surgery. No other information was released, including the name of the victim, which was pending family notification. So a day goes by, and heading of this, dog missing eye, but should survive after brutal camper attack in Colorado, August 8th, 2024. On August 7th, a Teller County Sheriff's Office reported that a woman and her dog were seriously attacked in a camper near Cripple Creek, with a woman who was assaulted succumbing to her injuries. An update from the Sheriff's Office includes additional details about this brutal assault, also correcting errors that were initially shared by the agency. While with Teller County Sheriff's Office had initially said the woman had died as a result of the attack, they have since reported that that is not the case. She is still alive, but in critical condition. Additionally, the Sheriff's Office provided an update on the dog that was with the woman at the time of the attack. According to the Sheriff's Office, the dog, named Ida, is doing well, though surgery was needed to remove her damaged eye. Swelling has since gone down from her injuries, and despite a skull fracture, she is expected to make a full recovery with the exception of the missing eye. That said, it is believed she will be able to adapt to the absent eye and lead a relatively normal and active life. So, the woman initially was reported that she had been deceased. The attack was vicious. We'll get further into detail when I share with you what this gentleman shared with me today. But the attack was so vicious and so just violently, unbelievably, it's hard to explain. Like, there was blood everywhere. And that's per the subscriber that I talked to. That the sheriff's office, the deputies on scene, really thought no one could have survived this attack. The dog, Ida, the sheriff's office had paid for her surgery and whatnot and kind of adopted her, which is amazing. And like a heartwarming story out of just a really sad experience. So, but the public is now in Teller County, in Cripple Creek. They're like, what happened to this woman? Why aren't we hearing anything more than she was just attacked and you guys are paying for this dog's surgery? Because nothing more was put out by the woman about the woman. It was all kind of, hey, look what we're doing. You know, there was a savage attack, but Ida's doing great. We paid for everything. Look at us. Look what we did, which is amazing. I'm not saying that it's not. But you've got a public that is terrified and not knowing what happened or who or what did this to this woman. But you're talking about the dog, which is a prime example of what the media and the local, state, and federal government do when there is something going on. They kind of shift the view off of what really is the issue. Like when Tony Aarons and Amber Miller were attacked, or Christopher Whiteley, they shifted the kind of eye on their drug addiction, their criminal backgrounds, like because they were drug addicts and had a criminal background, that had something to do with them getting savagely torn apart in the middle of nowhere. But, John and Jane Doe sitting at the kitchen table listening to the radio in the morning, having their coffee before work, or reading the news on their internet, when they see something like that, oh, well, he was just a criminal. Oh, who cares? We don't have to. Same with the dog. Brenda Hamilton and Dr. Nancy Shaw, what they did was they put the eye on the public and the surrounding populace of dogs in the area. Neither one really panned out to anything because both are still active cases. So public now. Should we be worried? Lack of info from Teller County authorities after brutal attack. The sheriff's office initially reported the victim died, but then said there was miscommunication. That's a big miscommunication right there. Cripple Creek, a woman is recovering from a brutal attack in a camper outside of Cripple Creek early Wednesday morning. Well, she wasn't recovering at the time of this. This was August 9th, 2 days after. She was still in extreme critical care. There was no recovery. They were still fighting. She was still fighting for her life, and they were still fighting to help her win that battle for her life. Teller County Sheriff's Office initially reported that the woman had died at the hospital, but then told us there was a miscommunication. This mistake and lack of info stirred up some panic, and I tried getting answers. I went to the sheriff's office directly. Any chance we could figure out where this actually took place, I think, is the big question. I asked Lieutenant Renee Bunting. No, they are not going to release that, said spokesperson Lieutenant Renee Bunting. Sheriff's Office posted on Facebook about this with nearly 150 comments. People expressed safety concerns, with one asking, quote, "Should we be worried about this violent person? We want to wait until we have more information," said Lieutenant Bunting. That makes sense, but there is no concern with the public about any information, I stated. That is the thing. They just want to know. My biggest thing is we're telling them there is no substantial risk to the community, responded Lieutenant Bunting. So she's blaming the public. This is a small community, and this woman was savagely attacked, almost dead, so bad that the sheriff's office did say she died. The dog was savagely torn apart as well. And you're going to blame the public because I don't live there, but we want answers. We're the public. You work technically for us. Tax dollars pay for, I hate saying that, and I hate hearing when people say, you work for me. But yes, you do. You are a public servant, and we are the public. You have the obligation, 1, to keep us informed, and 2, to keep us safe. So she's like, they just want to know, but that's all we're releasing right now, and they'll have to understand it. Well, Renee, eat one, but whatever. She went on to explain they cannot comment on an active investigation, but from Facebook comments, the community is asking for reassurance from law enforcement. You can give the reassurance. You can say, hey, we are looking for some so-and-so, something, whatnot. The public is safe. We do believe this. We do believe that. Instead, we can't comment on an active investigation. Bullshit. You can comment on certain things, just not all. We need you to keep us informed. for our peace of mind, one commenter said, which is true. And then the last information available on the news was August 21st, so almost a full month ago. Woman identified, remains in critical condition following brutal assault in Cripple Creek. So she's still in extreme critical condition 2 weeks later. Following the brutal attack of a woman and her dog in a camper outside of Cripple Creek, the Teller County Sheriff's Office had identified the victims involved. According to the Sheriff's Office, the woman has since been identified as Brianna Karlik, who remains in extreme critical condition as of the announcement. Karlik's dog, who has since been identified as Ida, was immediately taken to the local vet to receive life-saving surgery following the attack. Ida is currently doing extremely well and continues to be well cared for, the Sheriff's Office states. According to the announcement, Ida's vet bills were covered by the Sheriff's Office. According to the Sheriff's Office, just after midnight, August 7th, deputies received reports of a violent assault against Karlik and her dog. Officials said Sheriff's Office detectives are continuing to investigate. They have not released any word of an arrest or information regarding a suspect at the time. Members of the public with any information pertaining to this attack are asked to contact Teller County Sheriff's Office. Callers may remain anonymous if they wish. So that's the last of the news. That's it right there. And notice, and by the way, that noise, I have no idea what that is. And I apologize for, it was just a car going by. And it's 1 o'clock in the morning, so I apologize. So you've got the news and the police department, like the sheriff's department, saying, make sure you let the public know that Ida's okay. You know? Yes, that is amazing that the dog is okay. But that is not what the public cares about. They want to know what the hell happened to this poor girl and if they're okay, which is, understandable. Why wouldn't you want to feel safe in your own neighborhood? So after all this, I just kind of let it sit, and because there was nothing more to discuss. I could say, I feel a little strange. I did. I felt strange about the wording of everything, just like I just said. So I get an email from a tow truck driver who works with Teller County Sheriff's Department periodically on certain things, if there's accidents and such. And they wanted to share with me what they saw and what they heard from the neighboring campers and other people in the surrounding area. So according to this gentleman who works not for, but with periodically subcontracting tow truck driver, if there's accidents and such, his garage had been called out to remove the camper and the vehicle. Now, when they got there, they brought it to Teller County Sheriff's Department. He said that what he saw, the door had been ripped off of the side of the camper. Like something or someone just with an incredible amount of strength just ripped it right off a metal door. It's aluminum, and it could be done, but there were also large, what looked to be claw marks in the side of the door casings, which he knew were claw marks. But while talking to other deputies and such who were informed to lie, they said it resembles hatchet or an axe. And he clearly said these are jagged. these are not hatchet or axe marks, and they're long. You know, he could understand if there was like one or two, you know, maybe 4 or 5 inches in length along the side of the door on one side where like the hinge would be. But this is like something like rip the door off and put its hands or whatever on the side of the door and just ripped down. Proceeds to look in, and it looked like a massacre had happened, which it did. The innards of the camper were just strewn about. There was shredded stuffing from like a couch bed thing, and you know, the tables and such were just, it was just a really horrific scene and a lot of blood. Something that you just don't imagine a angry, crazy person doing. This looked like a wild animal. That's his exact words. It looked like a goddamn wild animal did this. So they get it out there, and he has to go back for the vehicle, because he brought the camper first, then they brought the vehicle. And as he's loading up the vehicle, he starts to talk to a few people. And one of the guys says, you know, I don't know what they're telling you, but Mount Pisgah, which I have had at least 2 different experiences shared with me on this channel, one being a Dogman and another being a crawler, that there was a large, at least 8-foot tall humanoid looking thing lurking around the area for a couple of days. A few people had seen it. One guy had almost hit it with his truck at night, but as it was going across the road. So he's under the assumption, and it kind of fits because of the environment and where it's at, the claw marks on the casings of the door. He said what it looked like is, if it was a crawler, whatever, it ripped the door off to get in, and as it was getting in or trying to get in, it must have put its claws on the top of the door and just slid in, like use that as like a prop to get itself in. But for 4 different people to see an 8-foot humanoid lurking about, and the location on top of no new news, let's just forget about it. Just like with Tony Aarons, Amber Miller, Brenda Hamilton, Dr. Nancy Shaw, Corey Godsey, the woman from Letcher, which is right above Corey, where Corey got, or right below where Corey Godsey was attacked, 28 miles. That's what they do. They quickly, when they fall through the cracks, fill in the blanks, and then done. The less information and the less we talk about it, the less people are going to realize that anything happened and forget about it. That's the only reason why. So that's an update on a very, very strange and horrific experience. Tyler County, Cripple Creek is a long way from Meeker, but, you know, multiple places in each state have multiple attacks. That's one of the first things that I did when I first started to read about this experience was, how close to Meeker is this? So I wanted to share the update with you. Let's jump into some experiences. Okay, so when there is attacks and disappearances in the national park and they are brought to public eye, what do? They close the park down and they feed us a bunch of BS. What I'll do is I'll share the news articles and then share the information. Chilhowee bear attack kills child. April 13th, 2006. A black bear attacked a family of 3 in Polk County, Tennessee, killing a 6-year-old girl and seriously injuring a 2-year-old boy and a mother. They had been airlifted to Erlanger Medical Center and are listed in critical condition. The attack happened late Thursday afternoon at the Cherokee National Forest at the Chilhowee campground. The family was visiting from Ohio, according to Dan Hicks, the spokesperson with the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency. It was around 4 p.m. when a bear walked up to the family near Benton Falls. Everyone started throwing rocks and yelling at the bear to get away. Instead, the bear picked up the 2-year-old boy and began to maul him. The boy's mother beat the bear off her son, and she was attacked. During the confusion, the 6-year-old girl ran away. The bear ran away as well. A search began for the girl, and she was found 100 yards away. Hicks said her injuries were consistent with a bear attack. The bear is still in the area and was fired on by officers. However, they are not sure if the bear was wounded or not, and the hunt for the bear continued. Attacks on humans by black bears are extremely rare. In May of 2000, a 50-year-old woman was killed in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. As far as we know, it's the first one fatal attack in the southeast, said Nancy Gray, a spokesperson for the park at the time. It's very rare for a black bear. They're just not as aggressive as grizzly. In that case, park rangers killed 2 black bears found near the body of Glenda Bradley after they were notified of the attack. There are only 52 known fatal black bears attacks in North America in the last 100 years. Next article. Bear kills child at Chilhowee Mountain. Just a warning for those visiting the Smokies to be careful around bears. Attack by black bear leaves 1 dead. A 6-year-old killed, 2 others injured in Polk County, Chilhowee Mountain by Ben Benton. One child was killed, and 2 family members were hospitalized after the bear attack Thursday afternoon at Chilhowee Mountain in Polk County, Tennessee. According to Cherokee National Forest spokeswoman Nina Burrow, the attack occurred at 4:20 p.m., according to Polk County dispatcher Gary Verner. A 6-year-old girl was killed. Her 45-year-old mother and 2-year-old brother were mauled by the bear, according to Dan Hicks of the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency. They suffered a lot of puncture wounds consistent with a bear attack, Mr. Hicks said. The attack took place about 1.5 miles from the Chilhowee campground. It was off the trail to Benton Falls, where some kids had seen a bear earlier, said Mr. Hicks. He said the boy was taken by Life Force helicopter to T.C. Thompson's Children's Hospital, where the adult was taken to the Erlanger Hospital by ambulance. Hospital officials on Thursday evening said both mother and son are in critical condition. Listen to everything that's said here. About 50 to 60 people assisted in the rescue with the search for the little girl who had been missing earlier in the day, officials said. Cherokee National Forest Public Affairs Officer Terry McDonald said federal authorities were investigating the attack. They closed the campground and were getting everybody out, Mr. McDonald said. The search continued into the night on Chilhowee Mountain, but Mr. Hicks said the bear had not been found as of 10:30. Chilhowee Recreation Area of the Cherokee National Forest has 88 campsites and numerous trails surrounding it. Bear attacks are rare in the area, but they do happen, he said. In May of 2000, a 50-year-old Cosby, Tennessee schoolteacher became the first known to die after a bear attack in the history of the Great Smokies, according to previously published reports. That attack happened near Gatlinburg, Tennessee, where Glenda and Bradley was presumed to have been taking a walk where Little River, she was attacked by 2 female black bears. Officials said one of the bears weighed 112 pounds and a yearling weighed about 40 were found near the woman's body. The larger of the 2 had been tagged for research purposes and was said by officials not to have shown any aggressive tendencies before the attack. So that is the news. That is what the news fed us. That's what they want us to believe. This is per a park employee. Hello, Jeff. I've been a subscriber for several months now. I've been waiting for the right time to send this in to you. This is the 3rd time I've heard you speak about cover-ups in Tennessee, so I figured it's as good a time as any. Odds are nothing will change in the future as far as the government coming clean. I will ask you not to reveal my name or any of the specifics of our lives. If you did, it would be very easy to figure out the source of this experience, and the NDAs were signed by these rangers and law enforcement officials involved in the case are still enforceable. This was a requirement in order for these men to keep their jobs. You see, my husband and I were both born and raised in Polk County. We currently still live in Benton. It is the county seat of Polk County. Polk County is a large county. However, the Cherokee National Forest makes up almost half of the county's land mass and lays claim to just under 49% of the county. Because of this, the county's population does not reflect its size. In 2021, the population was just a little over 17,000, with Benton ringing in right around 1,500. Benton is a very small town. Everyone knows everyone. They know who your parents are and who their parents were. Most of the citizens feel it is their business to know everybody else's business. We have 1 red light, 2 gas stations, 1 grocery mart, and at the time, there were 11 forest rangers to cover an entire county, and 3, maybe 4 game wardens. My husband was one of these. Okay, so this is where I can share. There's some information that she had put in where I couldn't share. This attack occurred on the Chiloe Mountain, aka Benton Mountain. My husband was working on this day, but not on the mountain. He was working elsewhere in the county, but was called to the location as soon as an attack was reported. He arrived on the scene within just a few minutes. The following was told to me by my husband, and I can still recall it to this day, almost word for word. When he arrived on the scene, he said there was so much chaos. They were told that a little boy and his mother had been attacked by something, and a little girl was missing. They were told the attacker was a large black creature on 2 legs, so they immediately assumed it was a black bear. Although they are a rarity in the area, and for the most part, black bears do not attack humans, unless it is a female with cub. Even then, the mama bear is more bluster and bluff than actual bite. My husband did not see the little boy nor his mother. They were airlifted to Chattanooga. While my husband was at his truck getting ready to go, one of the veteran paramedics who worked search and rescue out of another county came over and told my husband that he had treated several bear attacks over his lengthy career, and that neither injuries on neither person nor the scene was consistent with any bear attack he had ever seen. He was speaking very low and looking around while he was speaking to my husband, as if he was making sure no one was listening to him or watching him speak to my husband. It was only then that my husband took notice of people on the scene, and he noticed there were several men and 2 women he had never seen before. He said he just assumed that they may be upper tier for the TWRA officials or someone associated with the sheriff's department. So that would be Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency. After he was ready to go, he picked up his paperwork and camera and walked toward the area of the attacks. After all, it was his job. He would have to file paperwork on the incident. As he continued down toward the area, he noticed that it was taped off. However, he recognized no security guard on the scene. When one of the men on the outside of the tape noticed he was coming that way, he began walking toward him, holding up both hands. He told my husband not to come any closer. My husband started to say something, and the guy told him, "This is above your pay grade." When he asked what that meant, the man told him to talk to his immediate supervisor, but he was not to come any closer. So he turned around and went back to his truck. After this time, the Forest Service mainly communicated by radio, because the cell phones they had did not get good reception back in the area they had to patrol. He picked up his radio to get in touch with his immediate supervisor, who was supposed to be on his way to the area. At the same time he's attempting to raise his supervisor on the radio, the super called him to tell him stay clear of the actual scene, as he would not be required to file any paperwork. In all of the years he had worked there, this had never happened. He said it was at that minute he realized something was seriously off, and that they had already begun the cover-up. He just couldn't figure out what they were trying to hide. It didn't take long for him to figure it out. Within the next hour, 2 Suburbans arrived, with 6 men in each one. These men were wearing camo. They had weapons, but they were not from the military. Each local official was basically instructed to search with these men. It wasn't until these men arrived that they were permitted to begin the search. They were told that they could not begin the search until backup arrived. All Forest Service personnel on the site were armed with a sidearm. They also had shotguns they were required to keep in their truck. My husband had his sidearm at all times and his Remington 870. The deputies were also armed. My husband said all totaled, there were 12 to 15 armed officers on the scene, yet they were made to wait because someone in the know did not feel this was enough manpower/firepower for one bear. This is the point where in that news article I said kind of pay close attention to what they're saying at that point. Once they began the search, contrary to what is reported by the news channels in news articles, it took several hours to find the little girl. The news reports also said that the bear was killed by rangers that same day. Other reports stated it was a second bear which was killed that was responsible for the attack. As far as my husband was aware, no bear nor any sign of a bear was ever found. After they did find the child, he heard 2 rangers on the radio state that some strange tracks had been found, but that they were not consistent with any bear track. Once these tracks were found, local law enforcement was immediately dismissed, and at this point the search was left to go on to the guys arriving in Suburbans. Some other conflicting reports were the little girl was found 100 yards away from the original attack site. However, she was not found near the site. It took several hours to find her. Many reports state there were 60 to 80 volunteers. However, in the area, they felt they might find the little girl. No civilians were allowed. I will attempt to link a couple articles, which are the ones that I just shared. Once the child's remains were found, what little they were actually found was not rooted the normal way, nor per protocol or policy. My husband could not find out what they did with what was left of her. As far as I will take that is as far as I will take that, but I will say my husband did not sleep well at all for the next 5 days. Once he could close his eyes, he was unable to sleep for over 2 to 3 hours a night for the next several months. When he did sleep, he would wake up in cold sweats, and then he would start crying. We would be in the grocery mart or a restaurant or at church or at the movies, or hell, he could have been mowing grass. No matter what he was doing, I would often catch him just staring off and crying. It's like his soul had been broken or crushed. For a couple of years, he withdrew himself into himself to a point where he required therapy. I wasn't sure I would ever get him back. I can't say I ever did get the man back. I can't say I ever did get him back, who began that shift April 16th, 2006. The man was not the man who came back home the next morning, but after all was said and done, he survived and we survived. He was treated at times like he had committed some major crime by the higher-ups. If he was discovered looking into the case, his camera was taken along with his voice recorder, although he, along with several others, were required to sign an NDA in order to remain employed. At times, we both felt as though it was possible our home phone landline at the time was actually being monitored. The clicks and the irritating static that would increase and decrease during conversations were not subtle or quiet at all. Had it only been my husband who heard these things, I might have thought it was just paranoia. But I, along with our oldest son, also heard this new and unusual noise. This went on for a couple of years until we all stopped using the landline. We had to keep the line as it was required for his job, but one day, thank goodness, he finally decided it was time to move on and say goodbye to the landline and the job. He currently works as an environmental engineer for a chemical company. He loves his job and is doing very well. I wish I could say everything else worked out by itself, but he is still very adamant, and I do not hike solo, or I do not walk or run alone, especially close to dusk. I am happy to say he does sleep much better most nights. My opinion of the state and federal government is now pretty low. They know what's out there, yet they continue to try to keep it a secret, putting more and more people in danger. I feel there was a point when they had some control over these creatures, but now I feel as if the populations have exploded and it has become more difficult to keep them under wraps. I do not think it could be very long before we hear the same sort of disclosure we were given regarding the so-called UFOs. Thank you for taking time to look at this. I just had to get this off of my chest, and my husband agrees that even though there have been no other attacks in the area, people should know. From time to time, there are rumors of sightings of large black creatures running or walking on two legs floating around here. Once they start, it seems they will close the trails and campgrounds for maintenance. My husband also started hunting and fishing again. He usually goes with a former co-worker or colleague from the Forest Service. He keeps them updated. He also will come by from time to time when he has something important to talk about with my husband. But does not want to talk or text on the cell phone. Him not wanting to talk on the phone makes it seem as if not much has changed. I am quite sure the same creature is still lurking in the area so many years ago, still showing up, although infrequently now, just so we don't forget. Thank you for your work that you put into the channel. We appreciate it very much. Then, shortly after the initial time that I shared this, I got this email about a year ago, back in September 12th, actually. And a day or so later, back in the 15th, actually, I received another email after the husband had heard me discussing this. First of all, I would like to personally thank you for your professionalism and your discretion. You relayed my husband's experiences exactly as he wanted it told. We just finished listening to it. Actually, when I listened with my husband, it was my second time. He first said he would not listen to it. His main concern was only that the experience gets out. It was only after I told him what a wonderful job you had done and the relief I was already feeling after listening that he decided to listen. He was visibly nervous beforehand, But by the time it came to a close, although he smiled and shook his head in a positive way, his hands were trembling. I haven't seen that from him in years. He said hearing it brought back sights, sounds, and even smells from that day. Don't misunderstand, it's not fear, as most people know fear. This man, who served in the 7th Group, the 7th Special Force Group Airborne, he has seen and participated in quite a bit of destruction. It was a combination of seeing that sweet little girl who was killed by this thing. Her name was Alora. How he was treated by his supervisors, and then treatment he received by the government. He went from being a respected member of law enforcement, division of the TWRA, to feeling like he was less than trash. His fears, which stem from the NDA, wasn't just the fear of losing his job, but he could also have been arrested and imprisoned under the charge of being a threat to national security. You know, that old catch-all. It just makes me so mad and sad for everything he has been through and voluntarily sacrificed in his service to others. It was a huge kick in the gut. He always was a very quiet, humble guy, very confident, never boastful. However, they purposely took his self-esteem and made sure he felt less than, simply because his reaction was that they needed to get to the bottom of the problem and then attack it from whatever angle necessary. He was told he would not hunt the bear, nor would he put visitors to an area and position where they would feel uncomfortable. Basically, he would behave as if everything was fine, when all he ever had pounded into his head is that problems present themselves in order to be solved. Anyway, sorry for the ramble. I'll get off my soapbox and back on track. My husband wanted to express his appreciation, also a huge amount of respect he has for you, not only because of your handling of his experience, but also because of what you continue to do, despite ridicule of those who feel they know the most. He told me to make sure that I let you know he would never put any sort of financial security ahead of health, safety, and well-beings of others. But he was then and is today as sure as the day is long that those turds will not hesitate to carry through with their threats. My husband said we would wait like a couple weeks and see if this makes a stink, and if it does, after it settles down, maybe we can get in contact with you, yada, yada, yada. Once again, thank you for your attention to detail. I actually notice you yourself omit a couple of details, which I very carelessly failed to pay attention to. But most of all, thank you for respect and discretion. Take care. Be safe. So there was, like I said, in the beginning of all of that, like this kind of in quotes stuff that I shouldn't say. But I noticed that there were some things at the top that would bring light to whoever. And I left it out in this as well. But perfect prime example of a government cover-up with the help of the media. You know, there's 60 to 80 guys. No, there's 12 to 15. We found her 100 feet. Nope, it took 2 hours. Just, why do they lie to us? Well, I don't think we ever, you know, I remember starting this and people asking why they lie, and, you know, the assumptions, oh, it's because of the paper, it's because, you know, paper industry, it's because of the lumber industry, it's because of tourism, it's because of this. Well, I don't think any of that. It's because they want to continue to use these things as weapons of intimidation and weapons of war. And also, I do believe that the reason why they are so many of these experiences and such are in and around national parks and such is because there are deep underground military bases in national parks. Let's hide them in plain sight. The government loves to do it. So, anyway, let's move on. Now, like I said in yesterday's second half, when I shared Brad's angelic being experience, because I feel like on occasion that needs to be heard because we hear so much evil. We hear so much negativity from these encounters, from these creatures and the government that hides it. That periodically we just need to be reminded, hey, there is something that is on our side. And it is Jesus Christ and the angels, But I do believe that there is this biblical kind of war going on. It's not even coming to a head. It's just, in the time frame, people might be like, well, it's been going on for, 50, 60 years. Yeah. But 50, 60 years in biblical time frame is like 10 minutes, it's nothing. I think when this war really comes to a head, my grandkids won't be even alive still, So I think it's just going to continue to get worse and worse and worse until eventually shit hits the fan. But I think that we are starting to see different creatures lurking, land, water, air, and such. And this one is just so horrific that, well, you will see. My name's Zach, and I have shared this experience with other channels, but I'd like you to read it as well, because I do believe it helps cope with my experience. July 2011. I was 21 years old, and my aunt and uncle on my dad's side are from the Midwest came to visit my family who live in the Pacific Northwest. One of the highlights of our trip was that my uncle, who is my dad's sister's husband, and not related to me by blood, though he is still a cool guy, wanted to experience deep sea halibut fishing on the Oregon coast, which my dad had arranged via a charter, and lucky enough for me, I had the privilege of being able to go with them on this fishing trip. A little information about myself before we continue is that despite my use of a wheelchair, I always love activities such as fishing, hiking, traveling, and camping. For staying still is just not an option for me. However, the day before we were set to go on our charter, it was canceled due to bad weather. While we were all disappointed at this setback, to put it lightly, my dad, uncle, and I were determined to get a little fishing in and decided to go to a place called Devil's Lake, located near where we were staying on the Oregon coast. Anyway, the day after the charter was canceled, my dad and I loaded up into my uncle's truck, and we left early in dawn to do our fishing. When we got to the lake, it was something right out of a fisherman's dream, calm and pristine, with not another soul in sight. There was a rather precocious-looking fishing deck, one that seemed to float on water that had no guardrails or anything of the nature, and decided to set up shop there. Once my poles were baited and my line cast in the water, my dad and uncle went back to the truck for their chairs and the cooler so they could have something to relax and do whatever snacks and drinks they had brought as well. All the fishing gear was already out on the dock, so they didn't need to worry about that. I didn't think anything about being left alone on the dock as my uncle and dad went just back to the car, because all I had to do was look behind me and they were there. Frankly, my attention was drawn to the sky, of all things. Birds of prey were always a fascination of mine, and I looked above me to see if there were any in the sky. I always admired how the hawk and osprey seemed to be expert fishermen on the many fishing excursions I have been on, while I would be lucky to even get a bite. Bald eagle had been said to be in Oregon, though they were rare, and yet places like lakes around the Oregon coast were where you might find them. So I thought maybe just today I would see one. Focused was I on my thoughts that what happened next for me did not register until I was on the ground. Something had jerked me forward so hard that my wheelchair not only did a 180-degree turn, but spilled me out onto the dock as well. A strong, large fish was not possible because if that were the case, I would have been pulled straight in from the front of my wheelchair into the water. Instead, it felt as if something had grabbed a hold of my right wheel and wrenched it so hard that instead of falling straight into the water, I instead did a 180 turn and spilled out of the wheelchair onto my stomach. This thought that flashed through my mind was further cemented when my wheelchair was pulled away from me and I heard it splash into the water. Thankfully, and I cannot mean this sincerely enough, I always made it a habit to cut the steel belts off my wheelchair, or the seat belts off my wheelchair, whenever I got them. Otherwise, this encounter of mine would have probably ended different. Yet no sooner than when I heard my wheelchair go into the lake, I felt pressure close around one of my legs before I was pulled backward as I made a desperate attempt to crawl away, giving an involuntary shout as I was being yanked. There was nothing to grasp on the dock to anchor myself, and in sheer panic, I rolled myself onto my back, not thinking of what I'd encounter, and that's when I did see it. That face was the only thing I could look at. It was so human in an oval, feminine appearance, with sharp tooth-like scales running vertically down the entire area of the flesh, like some sort of natural armor that was a molded greenish blue-gray color that matched the water. Atop of its head were these gently writhing, long, fleshy strands of muscle that to me looked like seaweed cascading behind its back. There was a nose with normal nostrils like a human, but with small gill-like slits fluttering on the side of its head. Then there were those eyes, these amber golden eyes with soft rectangular black pupil, that if I were to compare now with another animal, I would say octopus. They were full of rage and anger, yet so unmistakably intelligent. Part of the way I've tried to cope with this experience of mine is humanizing the attacker. It seemed as soon as my eyes locked with it that it triggered an enraged response as it leapt its body on top of mine. I couldn't guess why it just didn't try and pull me into the water and finish me off. Maybe it thought it'd be easier to kill me on land before dragging me into the lake's depths. I remember as it being was on top of me, I felt sharp stinging sensation envelop my back, which, although excruciatingly painful, was nothing compared to the terror that was trying to rip my face off as this creature bared its human-like teeth despite obvious serrations at the end of them. Instinctively, I had brought up my arm and hands in a defensive position before me managing to get my forearm underneath the creature's throat, while my other hand pressed against its forehead, which caused the being to utter a frustrational, somewhat strangulated hiss. I know I was screaming frantically from the top of my lungs, and I was crying. There was no time to think, just act in a situation. And that's what I did until my uncle came and struck the creature in the face and head with his boot repeatedly. Almost simultaneously, my dad hit the creature in the back of the head with a fishing club, the weapon breaking on the fifth strike over its skull. It was here that the being's grip loosened and I was pulled away while at the same time hearing something heavy slide back into the water and what I assumed was this creature retreating. From there, I was carried back to my uncle's truck with my dad and uncle barking orders at each other. I remember being sat upright in the back of my uncle's truck, because apparently I had severe lacerations all over my back, and my dad sat beside me the whole entire time while my uncle drove us to the nearest hospital while simultaneously calling an ambulance for me. The attack couldn't have lasted longer than a minute from the time the creature grabbed my chair and tried to pull me into the lake than to my dad and uncle fighting it off. At the hospital, my uncle and dad blamed the nature of the wounds on a mountain lion, which I went along with because none of us had the energy to try even explain what we saw. There were lacerations on my arms, back, and even my legs where the being had grabbed me that satisfied the doctors enough with our response. Eventually, when I brought the subject up with my uncle and dad, they told me the same thing. They heard me screaming and saw this large being press the top of me. When they rushed in, they got a good look at it, and both of them described the same thing. This is the description. It was about the size of an average human, 6 feet, and those same sharp, toothy-looking scales adorned its entire body, along with the same molted blue-green-gray color. Its strong arms were wrapped behind my back as it tried to take a bite out of my head. From the back of its neck to the base of its spine, there was apparently a single uniform row of sturdy, sharp-looking spines, almost like a crocodile. They said my attacker had strong-looking legs as well that ended in large, taloned feet that were planted on either side of me as this creature was trying to finish me off. Yet the freakiest element to the being, according to my uncle and dad, was the creature's large tail that was almost as the entire length of its body, and they said it looked like a stereotypical mermaid tail, except with the sharp-looking scales and single uniform rows of spines on each side. Furthermore, when my dad recalled hitting the creature, he noted that no matter how hard he hit it, there was no blood or bruising, as if the animal's hide were natural armor, which I wouldn't argue. A decade had passed since this incident, and I don't think I am worse for wear because I have plenty of time to cope with what happened, mostly by researching what happened to me and trying to make sense of it. Interestingly enough, I found that there were reports from a lake monster in Devil's Lake, but the description is said the beast looks like an octopus, not a mermaid-type creature. In fact, the only reference to mermaids in the Pacific Northwest that I found was an Inuit legend known as the Kwalupelek, which is a dangerous sea creature that resembles a woman and preys on humans. I've always tried to look at things with a scientific mind, and I have done the same thing with this being I've encountered. Perhaps she is a different branch of evolution from us humans, forced to be as brutal as the watery environment she lives in order to survive. Thank you for reading my experience. So to me, that is just an absolutely terrifying experience. That poor kid, my heart went out to him when I first read that experience because, first he's stuck in a wheelchair, but he's making the best of it. He still does things. For me, being stationary just doesn't work. Good for him, It's just amazing. And to where most people his age at 21 probably wouldn't want to do anything like fish or even leave the house. But this poor kid, and then he does, and he's doing something that he loves with two of his favorite people, and he's savagely attacked. You can't tell me that this creature, when you think of portals or dimensional doorways, this thing doesn't belong in our dimension. This thing belongs in hell, A demon, an aquatic demon, maybe. And I think we're going to start seeing more creatures like this, you know. Or here's something interesting. In Dulce, New Mexico, in Nightmare Hall, there were chambers, water chambers, with aquatic cryptids that looked like octopus. Could it have been created by the government? Who knows? It's always an option. The government alien agenda. You know, the government was well aware of what they were doing in Nightmare Hall. They gave them the okay, you know. Just some really disturbing things that are going on right under our nose. And what's more disturbing is the people that don't know that these creatures exist call us crazy because we are aware. You know, they think the vanilla life is it. You know, that's all that exists is vanilla. Yet there's a hell of a lot of crazy, unexplainable things going on. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go. And honestly, what gives folks like all of us a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. And until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. And God bless.